All right, my demons, welcome to Sinful Sunday here on Reaper's Underground. And boy, do we have a treat for you today. I got my brother from another mother here, Human Hoof Beast, with me. And joining us for the...
Hang on a second. Josh, just go back out and then just come back in. That happened to me sometimes. Here, I'll write him. Sorry about that. Just go back out, and then come back in. I think we got him.
There we go. Yeah, there we go.
We're good.
For some reason, my audio disconnected.
That happened. That used to happen to me all the time too. I don't know why it hasn't in the past month and a half.
Okay, cool.
I don't know. For me, is either my computer falls over. Seriously, a cat knocks it over, something. But as I was saying, welcome to the Underground for the very first time, and this is truly history for this podcast. The awesome Josh Elmore of Cattle Decapitation. Thank you.
Of course.
Everybody out there in the Underground comment section, share the shit. Share it right now. Share it everywhere. Push it. Stop what the fuck you're doing. Put the snacks down. Grab the beer or the liquor and get going. All right. So before we get into this amazing interview and talking about cattle decapitation, we're going to take a quick commercial break to our friends over at Villanard's Tattoos. Check it out. Here we are. That's right. Weekend. Reaper and Mischief will be in Chicago at the Villanard's Tattoo Convention. Come down, check us out. We'll sign some stuff for you as well as take photos. It's a great time, great family, great artistry. All right, we are with Josh Elmore of Cattle Decapitation. How are you doing? And you're coming to us from Europe. Where the fuck are you?
I'm in Berlin right now. My gal and I live in Berlin, and our place just opened up at the beginning of February. So me actually more than her. She will be soon again, but just navigating German bureaucracy, which is fun. It's great.
I was going to say, I heard that was one of the hardest places to get in.
It's just a lot of paperwork, and for a country that's such a well-off Western nation,
for sure,
they still rely a lot on. Like I was talking to my brother, and I said it's like a 1970s DMV. Like it's like there's tons of paper, a lot of line waiting, and a lot of box checking, and a lot of government understandably wants a lot of every line is crossed, every box is checked, and everything like that. But the execution on the other side of like being prompt and like coming back is just either they're overwhelmed or or it's just, they're kind of burdened under the weight of their own, checks and, like that sort of stuff. So that's been interesting and will continue to be interesting. I have a visa appointment on the 6th of April, so hopefully that works. Or I've got to make some really quick decisions after that. So
absolutely.
Yeah. But it should be okay. It should be okay. I say that now,
awesome.
of course, but yeah.
Yeah, the Germanic tribes definitely make up about 70% of my ancestry. So that is the dream. So awesome. Must talk to Jonas from dang it, Poop and Got. He doesn't live in Berlin, but he's not far from there. So that would be awesome.
Yeah. It's like I really haven't made. It's gonna sound like, but I haven't really made too many friends yet or anything like that. It's more just sort of getting oriented with everything and acquainted. And that's, I didn't know this, but German apartments. We kind of got lucky, but a lot of German apartments, when you move into them, the bathroom, of course, toilet, bathtub, shower, if it has a shower, whatever. Kitchen is literally pipes sticking out of the wall and some outlets. You have no fridge. You have no anything. So fortunately, the lady that was moving out of here was moving into a place with both of her parents had passed away, and she was moving into that house, which had ample appliances. So she sold us like her dishwasher, her all the fixtures, because literally you come in here, if she wasn't doing that, there'd be no sink, nothing. You come in and it's an open room.
Wow.
And I was like saying that to I was shocked at that. People are like, what do you mean? It's normal. I'm like, you people are insane. I mean, I don't expect a furnished apartment, obviously, but unless it says that. But this was literally. But we got lucky. There's our stove and our, range and all that and stuff. So we got that off her and everything. But otherwise, yeah. The only thing we really had to buy new was a fridge, because she took her old fridge, which is whatever. That's fine. So, but also, actually, funny thing in the Netherlands. They did the same thing with they don't include appliances or whatever with rentals usually. They don't include the floor. And I know that sounds literally like there's no actual floor, but I think it's just like you have this tile or this sort of like wood floor. They don't include that. It's stripped down to whatever. There's concrete or whatever the barest element of that unit is. So, and then
you get a shack, basically.
Well, yeah, it's like regardless. But even the Dutch, from what they said, they're like, yeah, that is part of our thing, but it's crazy. We understand. That's for sure. Why, So it took a little bit for me to get used to that thought, at least, and then once I accepted it, I didn't accept it. I was just like, okay, I guess. But like I said, she sold us her stuff for a really reasonable price, so could be worse.
You bet. So let's just take it back to the beginning of this illustrious 20-plus year career. Holy shit! Especially for, a very extreme metal type of act that you are, kind of like the gore grind, death grind. There's so many labels. What would you call yourselves?
Well, I think it's evolved over time, both how we perceive ourselves, and then probably what other people have too. As you said, like beginning of the band, absolute gore grind, just grind. Super. As you mentioned, like early Carcass influence, and then I think, and I said this before, like there were three original members: Gabe Serbian, David Astor, and Scott Miller. And their aspirations, especially for Gabe and Dave, were, they were in the Locust at the time. And that was more of a kind of, I don't know if I want to describe it, like kind of sort of electro-spastic hardcore grind, kind of, I think the kids call it scrams in the early 2000s. Now that term is probably outdated by 20 years, but anyway. So the kids, now like mid or late millennials. I think they were at that time aspiring, because they were all listening to, old Cannibal, old Suffo, Carcass, Napalm, Brutal Truth, all that stuff. They were kind of aspiring to like have that type of band that was this side thing from the Locust. And so that was their outlet for that. And early on in that band, the Cattle's early in their history, the fellow I mentioned, Scott Miller, he was around just long enough to do this 10 Torments of the Damned EP, which was, came out, I think, I don't know if it was 97, maybe late 96. And then I'm not 100% certain what happened to him. All that I know is he disappeared. That's what he disappeared. So I don't know. I'm assuming since he was probably in his early mid-20s at that point, there was probably some he disappeared. Like, he owes someone money or something. There's like a certain time in your life where it's like, well, here's probably why you disappeared. That kind of thing. He actually surfaced a few years ago, so he's not completely off the radar. But so he disappeared, and that's when Travis kind of entered the scene, like 2 months into their history. And originally it was, at that lineup was Travis was playing guitar and singing, Dave Astor was playing bass, and Gabe Servian was playing drums. So they did that for a little while. And then this is where it gets murky because it's, I guess they decided to switch instruments. Okay.
And Halen, gotcha.
That either says everything about how good they were at their instruments or how whatever. But
right, whatever.
Actually, but they weren't like Dave was in Locust, a great drummer, and Gabe played guitar in Locust, great guitar player, So they decided, okay, well, Dave will play drums as he was in Locust. Gabe will switch to guitar as he was in Locust, and Travis would just sing. So it'd be a three-piece. So that's Human Jerky Homivore. And then I think 90, maybe 99, Troy Oftedal joined because they wanted to actually have a bass player. So he joined.
Right.
And he was with them. I mean, he was with us until 2009. But his first album that he was on was my first album, which was To Serve Band. But he'd been in the band few years more than I had at that point. He joined earlier. So, that was the very earliest, But I think, at that point they'd only toured like maybe gone up to San Francisco from San Diego a few times. It was literally just up and down the coast, playing regional shows. And then it was just those three. And then I moved to San Diego in August 2000. And originally, I met them when one of my old bands was touring in 1998. So we did maybe a month worth of shows with the Locust. So I got to know Dave Astor and Gabe via that, and developed friendships with them. And they were like, "Hey man," in the most Southern California kind of, "Hey man, you should move to San Diego. We'll start a rad band." I'm like, "Okay." So at that time, I was thinking that's cool, and I really like Locust and whatever. But I'm obviously in my other band that we're busy and doing stuff, and I have many things back there in Chicago that I was attached to. My family's from Illinois and all that stuff. And so about maybe a year and a half after that, for whatever reason, every band that I was playing in at the time, which I think was three, for whatever coincidence, just broke up or stopped playing or just all of a sudden stopped calling each other or something. So it was all of a sudden I was like, well then, maybe I'll call those guys up and make a appeal to them on so you still thinking about that band? So because I was 24, 25 at the time, it wasn't nailed down to being in any one place. I was just like, well, okay, let's do this, So I moved out there, and I remember I get there and I was hit up Dave Astor, who I was the old former drummer, contacted him, and I was just like, okay, here I am, and he's like, oh, you moved all the way out here? Oh. I was like,
a minute.
Yeah, I did. I mean, I'd been talking about this, so I don't know if he was expecting me not to follow through, or that it was some sort of yeah, man, it'll be sick. And I'm like, oh shit, he actually did. So I think it was kind of like, well, Cattle needs this. I thought it was going to be me and Gabe and him, and he mentioned to me, he's like, well, Cattle actually wants a second guitar player. Would you be interested in that? And I'm like, well, yeah, sure, of course,
Fuck yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, well, it wouldn't be him, Dave, Gabe, and I starting a band from the ground up, which, knowing how at that point Locust was super important to them, it would never be anything but the side project to that. So this was more like, well, Cattle was technically, depending how you look at it, a side project to Locust at that point, but it was still an established thing, and I could step into it and, whatever, hopefully. So I got together with him, Dave Astor, Troy, who was on bass, and Gabe was he's working today. He can't come out. So Troy's going to teach you these songs real quick and see how it goes. Okay. So I learned
jumped in.
I mean, yeah. Well, those are it's that era of the band is like, this song is 1 minute and 10 seconds long. Like, okay, there's 4 riffs. Okay. There's more memory, there's changes and stuff like that. So I was able to pick them up pretty quickly. So I think for the first practice, I learned, 3 songs and executed them at least fairly decently. Probably not perfect by any means, but enough where I didn't feel embarrassed. I felt confident after we did it. And so we, played and everything. And I was just like, oh, sick. Yeah, okay, cool. That's great. And then, we went our separate ways. I went home and everything. And then I basically called David Astor, called him 1 million times in the next month and a half. And he wasn't getting back to me. I'm like, man, I don't think I blew it. It wasn't anything where I was came out of it going, oh man, well, I didn't do this very well. And I just never heard from anyone. And, I was just
butterfly motherfucker at that.
Yeah. I was just kind of like, man, I'm all the way out here, so
it's a leap of faith.
So I think I got into, they have a free alternative weekly there or something, and I was looking for who wants to play, and I found a couple people and played with them once or twice. It was just kind of varying degrees of enthusiasm for whatever. And then I got a call back. Dave's like, hey, we were thinking maybe you want to come out and try out again. I'm like, oh, I guess I tried out originally. Didn't realize that. So I went out again. Yeah, I know, right? So I went out again, and I think they kind of decided at that point, oh, it was okay that they just well, we'll get this guy out here. So I went out and played again, and they handed me a demo CD, here's new songs that's going to be on our album when it comes out, another full length. Learn these, or learn a few of them, and we'll move from there. Okay, cool. So I was like, I guess I'm in this band, I think. And I just started showing up for practices. It's like a dog that you kind of feed once and then it keeps coming back. So yeah, I started showing up for practices, and it became a thing. And 2001 rolls around, August, sorry. That's when I joined. So I think this is maybe a few weeks after that. The Locust was getting very, very busy. Their popularity was just really, their star was rising. So Gabe had mentioned, he was just really busy with he was touring. They had a big tour schedule. And he was basically, he asked us to I think maybe we did 1 or 2 practices with all 5 of us, but he'd asked us, he's like, can we have a meeting? And we were all kind of I was just the new guy. So I'm just
yeah.
Oh, what do? I shouldn't have a say in this. I'm just barely, out of the womb on things. And so he called us together and was basically well, and you could tell it really upset him, and that he was really felt for the guys and he thought it was not threatening their friendship, but just was really a heavy situation.
Sure.
He was just hey guys, I'm so busy with the Locust, and now you have this gentleman, me, that's a full-time, it was going to be the other guitar player. Well, if I'm gone, it's not like you're allowed anything, because it's just he can step in. Yeah, we don't have 2 guitar players, but okay. So I stepped in, and it was just me until 2016. So we did, how many records? To Serve Man, Human Manure, Karma Bloody Karma, Harvest Floor.
Oh, it's a huge catalog, brother.
And Monolith and Anthropocene, it was just 1 guitar player. So eventually, we moved beyond that. So,
Parasite
When-
is number 10.
I know.
Yeah.
It's scary to think about.
When
You
you,
know-
stepped in, did you have any kind of inclination that the band just had something that you knew was going to grow like this? I mean, the level of success. Because you guys started at a time where metal it ran dry. You know, you had the big rush of Nirvana and Soundgarden and all that, and then Pantera comes out, you know, and they were like pretty much the big thing going, and it seemed like Cannibal Corpse was gaining a lot of popularity through the 90s, and then you guys kind of took all that stuff from previous extreme metal bands and took it to a whole nother level. Did you think that it was going to catch on this good?
I don't know. I think at that point in time, like especially, I can only speak from when I joined on, but I think
for sure
the atmosphere then was kind of like the big aspiration was like, oh, this type of cattle being a certain type of band. It's like, oh, maybe Relapse will look at us, or a label like that, or it's like that was considered. I mean, if it was an American, like a domestic label, that was for grind, gurgly, blast beat stuff. That wasn't like a Century Media or Metal Blade or a Nuclear Blast, which we had.
Yeah.
No, we that was like, oh, this unobtainable. That's like the major independent metal labels. That's out of our grasp. So it was like the thought was Relapse is like your Warner Brothers for blast beats or something. And then we're actually, and then what we did, we actually were prior to me. I think it was like they still had the contract, but nothing had been done. They were talking to Necropolis. I don't know if you guys remember them.
Oh yeah,
San Francisco. They had a bunch of bands. Like now that when I think about it, I'm like, oh wait, they had all these bands. So they had a contract from them, and I think I don't even remember if they had anyone look at it. I think they probably did, like somebody's cousin or something who was a paralegal or something like that, like glancing legal experience, like that looks good, But I think I remember them distinctly saying when they talked to whoever they talked to is just like, oh, I don't know, which was probably a combination of the contract being a little bit weird and also not understanding the standard economics of metal bands signing to small labels. So so that might have been an issue. So so that was just sort of sitting on a burner somewhere that they hadn't really attended to.
Oh, for sure. You always, kind of hear like it gets put on a shelf somewhere amongst like a million other bands' CDs.
Yeah. So anyway, a few months after that, we got a letter from Metal Blade, or contacted by Metal Blade. We were friends with still are. He's a very good friend of the band, us personally, Jim Mills. And he was working at Metal Blade at the time and really kind of leaned into them to be like, this band, I tell you, blah, blah, blah. So we had Mike Faley came down to San Diego, watched us practice. And this was funny. I just joined the band, but it was just like, hey, you're cool and all, but let's just, we don't want you to screw up in front of the Metal Blade guys, so we're just going to have us four. You could sit there and do this and headbang or something in the corner, which I don't blame him. I don't blame
Holy
him.
shit.
I don't blame him. So Mike Faley standing there in the corner, like rocking out, and I'm just like, but so he was like, took us everyone out to lunch and everything. We had a nice conversation and everything. And then I think we played up in LA at maybe it was the Whiskey or Knitting Factory. I don't remember. And Brian Slickle came out and saw us. And
wow.
And then they sent us the contract. So this is, like I said, this was Metal Blade, Century Media, Nuclear Blast were just like these not unobtainable, but just a sort of, that's a different tier than we're operating in. So we were really kind of shocked to them want to sign us, and so we were like, got the contract, and it was a, we did our diligence with looking it over and everything, and then signed with them. I want to say, I think early 2002, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was the start of that. We've been with them ever since. They've very good relationship with them.
Yeah, I mean, Metal Blade is just notoriously known for really caring about their artists. And would you say that they don't really impede on your artistry?
Absolutely not. They have been since the beginning, and this is one of our, I think, obviously we were a little more sheepish at that time, and we're talking to the big guys. We got to be, but we wanted to impart upon them, like, listen, we kind of want to have some wiggle room with our creativity, And I think one of the stipulations was, I think the length of our records had to be. This is like an older contract, so I'm sure they've edited it 700 times since then and now. But it was like the records had to be X amount of length in duration, and we're like, have you heard their first 2 records? That's like 25 to 30 minutes longer than we're doing. So we kind of like bargained for that. That's one of the things we could bargain for, as far as like, oh, could we make them X amount of time? It was like 35 minutes or something starting out. And they said, okay, and of course, since then we've exceeded that dramatically. But so yeah, that was originally the thing. So we signed with them, and they, through the years of like, I don't want to say our type of music, but just extreme metal, not really being a blip on the radar, as far as how maybe impactful it is today. They stuck with us and all that. So I mean, even through like, we've been around through so many different eras of, I don't want to just say what they've been, their forte or what they've been focusing on musically, but just all these other trends. So I mean, there was like, we kind of came at the time when the Carcass Clone thing was big. So there was Impaled, Exhumed, General Surgery, all these bands were kind of like lumped into that. So we were thrown in with that too, which at a certain point in time, well, it's not exactly inaccurate. But then even just when we got signed, it was like, I think we were trying to like, not making a concerted effort to, but we just started sort of pulling away from that to do our own thing. So we got lost, or we got caught up in that. And then there's like the mid 2000s was the metalcore explosion that got all huge. And then deathcore came after that, and now it's like, I don't even know. There's like the gent thing, and then like now this like true old school death metal done by 12-year-olds. It's crazy. I don't understand. So and that's me saying as an old. No offense to any of those bands. I don't even know who I'm talking about. I think, but that's me being old. So don't take any of that seriously. You'll get there. You'll get there too someday. I promise you.
Josh, you've kind of brought us to the point where you've talked about like you guys developing your identity, and if I can define the identity through my eyes a little bit to where you guys really came into your own, I really heard it a lot in Karma Bloody Karma, whole lot in there, and I will tell everybody, if you haven't listened to Cattle Decapitation before, to me you really need to listen to you guys, especially today now that you've got Belisario in the band. It's really opened up to where you guys are really doing different things, especially on the song "We Eat Our Young" that you guys have just released.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's that whole album. I'll just say this now. We can move. I'll go back to but that's writing off your comment you just made. That record is the newest record. Terracite is probably. Maybe 2/3 of the time, him and I are doing completely different things.
Yes.
So there's, you lock up on the heavy, like the chuggier parts, or if there's like any real quick single note stuff that you want to make really tight sounding, you do that. But then, he's doing one thing, I'm doing another, even if it sounds like, or like we're kind of in the same part of the neck, where someone's doing a different voicing, someone's doing octaves, another person's doing bar chords, or someone's inverting something, or whatever. So it's like, it doesn't have to be a complex, like, oh, we're doing all these crazy different things, but it's like, it fills out the sound, it complements each other in a way that like gives just more of texture, more atmosphere, and that's one of the things we were wanting with this record. So anyway, continue.
Absolutely, sorry. Like I noticed it, and what I would recommend everybody to do is listen with headphones or be in front of a really good stereo system and listen to the band like right up close, because when if you listen to it from afar, or you listen to it off your crap phone, you're missing so much out of Cattle Decapitation. And
You
the way that
button.
I would, the way that I kind of hear when you guys came into your own is your black metal influence and the phrasing that you have with that, but then real quick single note on like death metal,
Mhm.
real quick, and then changing tempo, stopping, taking off again. And then Travis Ryan's absolutely pioneering vocals to me, the range he can do about everything. I think the guy from Lorna Shore, he would have to
Had to
praise
be influenced
Travis.
by him.
Everybody
Yeah.
would. Everybody would have to praise Travis and you guys. That to me,
Yeah,
that's cattle decapitation.
I
It's kind of like my last little idea. It's like
mhm.
it's it's like some bands give you a cheese sandwich. It's just white bread, cheese, and mayonnaise.
Mhm.
But you guys have put oregano on it. You've grilled it. It's vegan cheese. It has tomato. It has salad dressing on it.
Forget
It
the
is
spinach.
so
Yeah.
rich. And when I listened to the first album I heard, it was in Phoenix. New Times Rag
Mhm.
uh, did a little write up about your show coming up and about the new album. And
Mhm.
I went straight to Zia Records in Phoenix and bought the CD, the new CD. And when I listened to it, it was one of those albums that, like, the first time I ever heard it, holy, unholy shite. I fucking loved that album. And it was the variety. It was the black metal. It was the death metal. It was the changing tempo, stopping and going, and then Travis's vocals. So that there, I've given you a lot. You can take off, Josh.
Yeah, I definitely think Karma was. I think I've said this before. Like I think our records go in threes. Like which is scary to think that there's a,
Like a
but
formula. Yeah.
yeah, well, it's like this. Like you could tell that the first two are kind of trying to get to what the third one ends up being, and then
Yes.
there's like a page. You turn this page, and there's like a new thing that you're trying to go for. So they each kind of build on one another, and like, okay, well, even if achieved something, I don't know if it is, but we feel that we've kind of got that.
Mhm.
It's just kind of these eras. So I think with, like, say, Human Tricky Homivore, it was just like, we just want this, or I shouldn't say, I just, what their intents were, but like, just like death metal grind, just ripping blasts and stuff. And then Disturb Band was like this sort of, we're actually can afford, because we're Metal Blade now. They gave us some money to be in a little bit more expensive studio.
Mhm.
And so then that album came. It's like, oh wow, this is really, it's like a lot more clean sounding, than the first two records, which is nothing. Believe me, I'm a big fan of like absolute like
Mhm.
boombox sounding records, and so there's not to detract from Human Jerky or Homivore at all.
Mhm.
But and then after that, Humanure was almost to me at least, that's the second record I would have been on, was somewhat of a reaction to Serve Man, because we were like, we listened to all this. Pardon me, get off there. Sorry.
That's me and my cats, brother. Don't worry.
I was just gonna say, we have cats, and so I look over and I see this Ted, our big male cat. He's like got his like. We had dinner earlier, and my gal's like working on her screenwriting in the other room and put her food down here while I'm doing this, and so I look over and his face is shoved in her leftovers. Either way, so so with Humanure, it was like I felt there was this reaction not against To Serve Man, but to be like, well, a lot of the music we're listening to is a lot more either complex or just more like, I don't know, just there's more depth, or there's a lot more going on, whatever that ends up being. So we wrote Humanure to kind of like not be an anti-To Serve Man, but just be like, oh, here's kind of us at this point in our writing, playing life, 6, 7 months, 8 months later, let's make these songs longer. So that's definitely a bridge between To Serve Man's kind of just like very much martial kind of simplicity. I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but it's very two speeds, And then Humanure, which was just sort of like, oh, we could expand upon that. And there are a few, I think, even looking back now, I mean, I really like a few of the songs on that record. But then Karma, as Todd mentioned, it's like that's when I think it was, you got away from reacting to Disturbed Man. It was here's this sort of, I don't want to say confidence, but just this sort of like, I guess, of wanting to incorporate this stuff and feeling me just speaking personally, feeling comfortable enough, or not comfortable enough, but like wanting to experiment more and put more of my personality as an individual player or whatever into the music, instead of just like trying to be like, feeling like I'm auditioning continuously. Like of course I want to please them. I want my bandmates to like my performance and like what I write. But this, I was just like, I want to impart some of myself on that. So I think with Karma, that's where that kind of came from. Whether some of the more like kind of blurry, dissonant, I don't know, glissando-y sound and stuff, and then some of the more black metal stuff on that too was, but I will say I can't take absolute responsibility for that part of it, because Troy, often all at the same time too, he was a black metal fan. I mean, both him and Travis, and Mike Lachlan, the drummer, were black metal fans as well. So definitely with the riff writing part of it, I mean, I cannot overlook Troy's contribution to that stuff too. So he had a part to play in that. It was by no means was it all me. There was this convergence of, like I mentioned, me feeling more confident, wanting to put my stuff in it, but also Troy exploring that side of what he was trying to write too. So.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's like, very evident, stylistically, especially in the drums, you can always get a really good sense of, that type of ferocity. For me, I know I kind of came late, but Humanure is the album that I first came to. And me being, I'm dating myself here, a child of the 80s, I went off of this album cover, grabbed me by the balls, and said, "You must listen." Because at that time I was really starting to get into a lot more black metal, and a lot of it, of course, based on covers. But then I saw this. Everybody always talks about Cannibal's crazy fucking cover, right? And I saw this. I said, yes. I'm a huge horror fan. All of us are here at the Three Witches Entertainment. And I was like, oh, this is just right up my alley. I already knew I was about to go on this like thrill ride. So, and what I heard just blew me away. So one of the questions I had to ask is the concepts for your covers. Is there some horror influence there?
I'll have to say, like, I don't know. It's definitely not something that's like an overt, like we're not drawing from those like type of influences, but our cover concepts are pretty much a collaboration between Travis's sort of like, because the conceptual side's like it's myself, Dave, Dave, Bell and Ollie, music. That's us. And then he's obviously lyrics, vocals, of course, and then all the concepts, imagery, vibe on the visual and lyric line. So for the longest time, he's been the one spearheading all that and working directly with Wes Benscoter. And Wes has been incredibly good about translating Travis's concepts into what you see on the covers. I think Disturbed Man and Humanure, I think those might have been all Wes at that point in time. And the funny thing was Karma had originally had a different title to the record and different artwork, completely different artwork. We were in the studio mixing Karma Bloody Karma, and it had a completely different title, completely different artwork. And to this day, I mean, I haven't seen it in years. I think Travis probably has it like in one of his folders, but Travis has it. I should ask him to see it again. Wes wasn't happy with it, where he was going with it. And I remember Travis and I were just like, this is incredible looking. I love how this looks. And he was just like, Wes was just like, there's some element to it he couldn't get right. He's not feeling it or whatever. So we kind of had to, Karma was like okay, we got to switch gears on this, So Metal Blade was already all in on our other title, and okay, Wes is doing such and such for this.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, whoops, big turn. So that one was kind of like a quick, oh crap, not to detract from the art, because I've seen so many people with that tattooed on them. The floating cow, the cow god. It's crazy.
So it must not have been a hard sell.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, it's like, and with Harvest Floor On, it was really even more so with. I mean, obviously all these Travis is the one that was the main communicator between him and Wes, and kind of, but with, from Harvest Floor On, it was full on. Those guys are really, really a team, So we've been thankful to have him for, since To Serve Man. So now 21 years working with him.
Yeah.
And,
I mean,
Terrorsites may be the best one.
I'm glad you say that, everyone has their favorites, but thus far, either people love it. Well, it's a good sign when people either love it or hate something. Then you're probably doing something. Something. I've heard people say like, "Oh man, like once you get over the initial shock of it not being like a gore scene or some like apocalyptic thing, and you just kind of look at it, you're like, this is really kind of gross, isn't it? It's like yeah. And so like you look at the details on the figure and all the just in the background and it's a really like the color scheme is completely different than anything we've ever done, which we wanted. We were really dark and murky for a while. We're like, okay, we're gonna punch this out like with a lot of like sunlight and color and stuff. And so either that or you hear the people saying, "Oh, it's the guy." Once again, dating myself. I think I've seen the movie, but like probably with like a nephew or something. But like, "Oh, Bug's Life. It's a Bug's Life." It's a Bug's Life. And it's like it's one of those things which is just like the internet disease of people patting themselves on the back for making the same joke that 8,000 other people already did. So someone said that right when we introduced it, or it was introduced for us, I should say. And it was like, oh. Okay, and nothing affected me. So I'm glad that you.
And there's a couple of points I wanted to ask about that. So one is about Franz Kafka. Franz Kafka was a vegetarian as well, and there is a vegetarian element, not as thick as it used to be, because I think it's just you and Travis.
Yeah.
But so I was wondering if Franz Kafka maybe played a little bit with that with the cockroach, and then also I loved the reference to the inside of Death Atlas, where it introduced all you guys inside the folds as that charred kind of remains, and here this comes out. So to me, it's definitely connected to Death Atlas.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there was those, like we just called them like the Pompeii bodies, that we had, that we were all encased in this like ash and whatever. And then, right on the cover, it's this figure busting out of that sort of thing or emerging from it. So absolutely, there's that connection with Death Atlas. But as far as like the Kafka reference, I think I've heard that twice, and you're the third. You'll be the third person, and so you're totally right. I mean, when I say right on, I don't know if Travis had. That was I somehow don't think so, and it's not a derogatory. I just don't think that's what's his angle. But you're absolutely right on with saying that. There was just someone made a comment on like a thread, like, "Oh, Kafka reference," and then my sister-in-law basically said, "Oh, nice Kafka-esque cover there," or whatever.
Oh.
So I was like, "Oh,
we're on to you guys."
Exactly. I guess they're like totally right on. I can totally see it. People saying that, and it makes sense. It makes sense, But no, I don't think that necessarily. I mean, Travis could like a message could pop down during this and go, "Of course I am, you idiot," But maybe not. I don't know.
So, going from, talking about this just impeccable artwork, I mean, the darker the better for me. I love it. I love the brutality. So that leads me to a story. So my son and guitarist of my band, I played a video of yours for him that really shook his foundations. You're like, I know what's coming.
I know this one too.
I'm calling DCFS on you right now.
Yeah.
I'm calling DCFS on you right now. The Department of Children and Family Services.
No, he was grown. He was grown.
Oh, okay.
Don't worry.
Well,
No, I would never. No, I would not. No. I mean, I'm a son of a bitch, but I ain't a bastard. That's what I always say. And I was like, dude, because he knows I've listened to you guys, for years. And of course, I never really, played it for him. I was like, check this out, because he was starting to get into a little bit more extreme at the time.
yeah.
And after I had watched it, I was just like, this is the best thing ever. Whose idea was it to try to grab a horror director in order to just pound that through visually?
Yeah.
I thought it was
Literally.
genius. And literally. It was like headlines everywhere. This video is just an abomination. And it was genius. Was that Travis's idea there?
There was a fellow, or is, not was, he's hopefully still around. He's named Mitch
Well, thank
Massey.
you.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
He did Forest Gender Reassignment. He did Your Disposal. He did he did all these sort of conceptual stuff on Kingdom of Tyrants.
Yep.
And he did Crocodile off Anthropocene.
Mm-hmm.
He has since, when I say retired, he's probably 10 years younger than me, but has since retired from the video business and is now some other industry. I don't know what that. I don't remember what that is. But either way,
Because he's a genius.
He is absolutely. He is one of the smartest people. He's incredibly interesting to talk to. Extremely well read. Just it's like I probably still have on my phone. I'm looking for it. It's what I'm talking to right now. But a bunch of like books he suggested to me to read because we get talking off to the side. He's like, "Oh, you need to read this and this," and so of course I'd write it down and everything like that. So that type of fellow. And he actually had made videos for this band All Leather, which one of the four members of the Locust had. It was kind of like a electronic sort of dance punk sort of thing. What do you want to call? And then he did a Dillinger Escape Plan video, and he'd done a couple others. And we saw the All Leather video because we friends with those guys, and we're like, "Wow, this looks incredible. This is really kind of off-putting and weird in the best possible way." And then Dillinger worked with him, and he's done a bunch of other bands, or did a bunch of other bands before he retired. And we were just like, "Oh man, we gotta call this guy." And so we did. And the first one he did do for us was Kingdom of Tyrants. We had our friend Tyson he did the Body Farm video.
Yeah.
I don't know if you it's that fake newscast at the beginning of it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
The commentator, this Tyson fellow, he's since passed away, but unfortunately, he's doing like the newscaster, and he is the most Southern Californian voice. He's like, KSBB News. It's the most skater voice ever. So you have this super straight news broadcast, and then him being all like, dude, it's funny. Either way, he filmed all the performance part of it. And then Mitch Massey did all the parts with like the people with like the I don't even know how to describe it, but the headpieces and everything. And he does all this stuff in his garage and in his basement.
Damn.
It's crazy. I mean, of course, Forced Gender Reassignment, there's the outside scenes at the beginning and everything. That's in a parking lot, probably at a Target or something. And he's from Evansville, Indiana, so probably a Target there, whatever. So we had him in Kingdom of Tyrants. Yeah. And then Forced Gender was the second one. And that was what Travis basically told him, okay, here's the lyrics, kind of heading in this direction. Just make it so irredeemably awful.
Just like Travis.
Yeah, he's like, just make this terrible. Something that almost makes you mad because it's so awful. Like just repulsive, terrible, And Manch was like, okay. And he had a team of like, I think maybe 5 or 6 people that he worked with regularly on videos. It would be the actors or help with the crew stuff, and they'd all kind of switch off. So he got these poor people, to have their, as you see from the video, their genitals basically like latex sort of molds made of them, or they were like nude in the video. There's the guy, the central character, and then the man and woman who were having these things done to them, got them to act and all that stuff. And when we first saw it, it was just like, well, we got our money's worth times a million. Because it was like, it was crazy. Like, we were just like, okay, well, we showed Metal Blade, and they were just like,
yeah.
And I mean, but at the same,
drop.
At the same time, of course, YouTube is not going to allow that to be on there. But if we debut it on, I think Bloody Disgusting was what the site is called. It's like a British-based like horror movie. I mean, you guys would know. I don't want to say yeah. And so it debuted on there, and it got something like several million views just via that outlet. Wow. And then it went to, I think Vimeo had it for a while. Maybe they still do. I don't know. So you could show it there, but YouTube had come up for like 20 minutes and then it get pulled down. So there was this cat and mouse thing for like a few years, and then finally, like, it was up for like a year. No one complained about it, or they, like, whatever algorithm it's something just like moved out of the system or something. Yeah, it fell by the wayside. So I haven't looked for it. Why would I? Forever. But it may still be up there, may not. But it was just that so much blew us away with how he, like, not only hit it on the head, but went like several steps beyond. And when I say over deliver, I don't mean that in any sort of negative way, but just sort of like blew us out of the water. It was just like, holy crap, we're not going to be able to, compete with that. So he did that one, and then he did Your Disposal, and which I think is obviously doesn't have as shocking content, but I think as far as the look, like how our performance parts look, it looks really cool. It's super bitchy. It's high energy. Yeah, you have this sort of horror gore element to it, but it's almost like it's like maybe a third of the content of the video versus like Forced Gender, which was like 85% of this sort of theme in this video, so the concept stuff. And then he did a Crocodile, which was far less gory, but it was the amount of work it took to get all these little models and all this sort of like the characters. It's crazy. And once again, all in his basement or like a garage or like a small building. It's not like he has these big sets. It's like him and his friends. He just has a great eye. He's intuitive. He knows exactly the proper thing to do to convey what you're trying to put. He's great. And this is not a fault to anyone we've worked with since, but I love to work with him again in some way. He is just so good.
The attention to detail, the way everything gets foreshadowed, and it so much that that video heavily influenced the video when I was in a band called Black Tar Superstar. We did a video for Serial, which we got so much hate for that video, so I just have to thank you. We went as shocking as we possibly could, and the fact that it never got taken off of YouTube kills me to this day.
Yeah.
But you're so I thank you, because I just thought it was just brilliant art. Everyone else is like, anyone that like recognizes how videos can really tell the tale, of what the lyrics are conveying, and really kind of, push that. A lot of videos, it's like you watch them, you still don't get really what the vocalist is singing about. This one, all the way, and I loved every video since.
Yeah, it's funny, like, two things from that. Like, I see occasional comments, people saying like, oh yeah, it's so extreme and so shocking. I think they really went overboard. It's like, it's like, what do you want? For that type of video, it's like, thank you, Mitch Massey. So, and I think this is obviously that time period. It came out 2012. that time period was sort of in that era of YouTube was the birth of the reaction video. I think. Does that seem about that time? There were so many reaction videos for that I think that almost helped just as much as whatever content the video had. Because there was one distinctively I remember that was these two maybe mid-teens girls or whatever, and they were just watching it, and it was like the looks on their face were like, it seemed, I mean, a lot of reaction videos, especially now, are all just like, whoa, you know,
Right.
clicks, whatever. But these, at least, if they were selling it, they were doing an extremely good acting job. It was just hilarious because you can imagine if you had a sister or like friends at that age reacted the same way. They're sitting there like eating Twizzlers and like in their like pajamas or whatever, watching it. And it's just like a total like hangout thing. They put up a camera, so it's just funny. It's like that sort of genuine response is just. I think those sort of things help just as much as the content of the video. Not to detract, obviously, from anyone what they did, but that time in history and that type of video exploding or that type of form just helped like crazy. So, yeah, and I can't thank Mitch enough for that stuff. You know, he really, you know, wherever you are, Mitch. You know.
Probably hiding people going.
Maybe still in Evansville. I don't know. Either way, but that's not a knock. I'm from the middle of nowhere. Actually, way more than the middle of nowhere than Evansville. So.
Hey, I'm in Nebraska, man. I feel like I'm like buried.
Yeah, I'm from 2.5 hours south of Chicago and an hour and 45 minutes west of Indianapolis. So, like really like. We had a college town maybe 35 minutes away, and then the town I was actually born in that had a hospital, was had a recycling plant, a GM foundry that's closed, and the Chuckles factory. So, hey.
Amazing corn on the cob in July.
Oh, yeah, dude. My dad planted a sweet corn patch every year in addition to our regular field corn. And that was awesome. It was one of the best things ever. Like, seriously, it's that time of year is like, even now, you know.
Hey, Josh, like I watched Ollie Thenard on NAM right before COVID hit, and I was blown away by his bass playing. What a nice guy. Amazing bass player. Yes. Could you talk a little bit about him and also Belisario, and then also when Dave came in?
Yeah.
Dave's playing on the Harvest floor in the production that you guys got. Your guitar stands out clearly, and his blast beats, especially the opening of I think it's the Gardeners of Eden.
Yeah.
Shit, so fucking good.
Yeah, that's a song that we always kind of flirt with playing live again, and then it's like the joke is after we talk about that is like, hey Dave, you ready for that minute and 15-second gravity blast at the end of the record or the end of the song? And he's just like, don't know. But
I feel that physical level.
But yeah, exactly. But yeah, I'll start with Dave since he was the first person that was kind of in that sort of time progression. He joined in 2000. Well, Mike Laughlin, our previous drummer, had left for a brief time. I think when right as we were almost done with the studio for Karma Bloody Karma. So we did a couple tours with sort of fill-in drummers. Kevin Talley actually helped us out for a tour late 2006. And then Mike joined back up with us for, I want to say maybe 8 months to a year or something. But it was kind of like, I don't want to say contingency, but just sort of like temporary. You know, I don't think we were kind of filling each other out because he was his life was changing at that point, and we were, obviously trying to move forward as a band. And so, he's still a friend, and he still is a friend to this day. But we just kind of were on different pages at that point. So we'd been looking at Dave for a long time. One of his former bands had played with us a couple times, and we'd seen him at festivals, and we're just like, gosh, this guy is phenomenal. Just ridiculous. Like almost like you laugh when you watch him play because it's just like, God, this dude.
You just know the magic is there.
Yeah. So Travis and I were just like, seeing this guy. And we originally approached him we were doing a festival with him in outside, like maybe a suburb of Milwaukee, back in 2006. And we approached Dave and we're kind of like, well, you know, if you want to come try
Would you like
out.
to?
Yeah. And at that point in time, he was like, you know, I mean, to his credit, very dedicated to his band he was in. And we weren't trying to like steal him from that band. We're just like, hey, if you ever want to do anything with us, let us know. And that band, I think it's still actually around today, but he ended up not getting out of the picture with that. Maybe, I want to say beginning of 2008, but to kind of like as a, both probably for him and us, he did a sort of filling in for our tour we were on. It was with Vader, Malevolent Creation, an early iteration of Veil of Maya, and who else was the other band? I'm going to feel bad because you know I'm going to get a message from one of the people in this other band and be like, "Thanks, bro. How many years have I known you?" That kind of thing. So we did this tester tour. I hate to put it that way, but just, you know, for him and us, with the Vader tour. It was the first Death by Decibels is what it was called. I don't know if they may have done a year or two after that, like with other bands, obviously, but I don't know if it could. Obviously, we're doing this other Decibel tour coming up here in a few months, but either way. So we did that tour with them. What's that? Oh, yeah. Okay.
I say,
okay, thank you. Thank you. I'll plug that later. But
oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
I will be there.
Yeah. So, oh, yeah. Charlotte. So we had him do the tour, and he's still here with us, so he had a good experience, I guess. So yeah, we did that. We were thrilled with his playing.
Man.
So he, you know, that was in November 2007. So I think maybe, I want to say spring 2008, he decided to play with us, you know, for reals. And we wrote Harvest Floor with him. And at that point in time, and this kind of goes back to the Humanure thing I was saying with our, at least I can't speak for everyone else, but maybe my thought process or what I thought that we were trying to do was at that point, 2009, it was like, we just were like, okay, not that we want to try to make things as tech as possible, but we really were trying to, like, you know, at least what we could do personally, flex in that way. You know, it's like I want to push myself, more like pushing oneself, not flexing. There's bands that could way beyond anything that we could compare, or me, I should say. But so we were trying to push that part of the band, you know, like really like maximize that. And so that's what that record ended up being. And Dave just went crazy on that, you know. I mean, he just like a few of the songs, like, you know, I haven't listened to the record in a while, but like you mentioned, Gardeners of Eden has that ridiculous outro where it's just like, you know, for
absolutely.
A second. And then say Into the Public Bath. That's another song that's, yeah, not to say deceptively complex, but like, especially what Dave's doing, it's like he's playing two drum parts at once simultaneously, you know, on it. You know, and there's a few other songs too, like Right Beneath the Rhine. That's just like, what is even happening? You know, so he really was able to execute the stuff, you know, ideas, ridiculous or not, in our heads in a way that was like, yes, that's what we're talking about. You know, so he really kind of came in, and that's definitely of those eras, like I was speaking at the beginning. That's definitely the most realized of the Humanure Karma era, Humanure Karma Harvest Floor era. So he kind of came in at that point, really was just like, oh, we're going to cap this off with this sort of way to execute this record. Once again, that's just my interpretation. I'm sure the other guys may completely disagree, but that's just my thing. So, and then moving forward after that with Monolith, Anthro, Death Atlas, and now Terrasite, he's still... Yeah, I think he made a comment too. He's like, he was wanting to make his drum parts like, you know, like anyone for whatever instrument perspective they have, is make it as memorable as possible. So, you know, he's kind of, yeah, he's had all these like a lot of tasteful stuff. Even if he's in the midst of ripping, you know, he still tries to impart something like that. So, but I mean, I will say,
take everything else either. It fills in those gaps like.
Yeah, and I mean, we have been like really, really trying. He will always be like, "Hey, you want to put a gravity blast on this new song?" And he's like, "Nope." nope, not doing it. I think he's like, I think he kind of like did that both, you know, obviously record and live and everything, and kind of maybe did his personal sort of victory lap on like. He's like, now I'm moving on with my life. I never have to think about doing this crap again. so I don't know. So yeah, and he's, you know, obviously his performance on Terracite too. I don't know what you guys have. I'm assuming all of you guys have heard is just Weed or Young.
That's all I've heard.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know, because like some stuff is sent out for review. Like I've been doing a bunch of European interviews lately, and I wonder why. And no one else is up when I'm doing it. They've been mentioning Dave's performance on that record a lot. So it's just,
I can see why.
yeah, he's really like honed what he's doing into this like super efficient and really
Yes.
And when I say efficient, I don't mean spare. I just mean like very focused and bang for your buck on. He's saying everything he can in the most efficient way, you know, in the most tasteful way. So, yeah, so he's still keeping on, and, you know, we're so delighted to have him, you know. I know it sounds weird, like, oh, we're just great to have, but I mean, we are. It's both in a friendship way and, of course, musically, you know. So, and then with Bell and Ollie, about 2000, here's this, my cat still is rubbing on me here, so don't. Here.
Get a little close.
This is Ted. He's our just big lug of an animal who loves to sleep on my face at night and almost suffocate us. Yeah, so he's a good guy.
On my,
and he weighs a lot too. So anyway, about 2000, I think 16 or so, we there was a discussion, like they were like Travis and Dave had said, like, well, and had said at the time, they're like, we really kind of like, I think we were watching like live footage or something like that, and I was doing like either some sort of melodic thing or like a lead or something like that. Mm-hmm. And the comment David made was just like, he was like, you know, it's everything sounds good, but it's just like the bottom drops out when it's just one guitar, so it's just bass, drums, and, you know, Travis. If I'm doing a lead, Travis isn't singing, so it's just like, oh, okay, you know. He goes, like, we really need another guitar in there to like thicken up the sound and to make things not seem so empty. So they decided, like, we're like, oh. You know, of course, I've been the only guitar player for many years, so I'm just like, am I screwing up? I mean, I've been playing both parts, you know, and like, you know, juggling all this crap for years. So, you know, it was kind of like not surprising, you know, because David mentioned it before, but just sort of like, you know, to hear it actualized verbally in a way that like, yes, this is what we were thinking of doing. That was kind of like shocking at the time, but we were actually sharing a practice space with Bell's. I mean, they're still together technically, but I know the other members are either like they're doing other things. Like the drummer's in another band, and the other guitar players no longer around. The singer, I think, actually moved out of state. But either way, he had another band that we were sharing a practice space, and that band is Eucharist in San Diego, death metal band. And so it was kind of like, well, his stuff's sitting on the other wall over there in their practice room. You know, he's a good guitar player, so. We asked him if he wanted to try out, and he was like, sure. Because I mean, Eucharist was playing out, you know, it wasn't like they were like inactive or anything. They were definitely active, but I don't know. I think you saw like, you know, I guess, you know, he said he was a fan of the band prior to playing with us, and just saw us as a little more like we were going to be active. We're touring, you know, putting out records, doing that whole thing. So, and Eucharist had, I think they had like a couple, 3 records out, but I mean, whatever. I mean, now that they've all kind of gone their separate ways, but anyway, so he started playing with us as a like live only, kind of like rhythm guitar, whatever, or just live only guitar, second guitar player. And that started, his first show with us was, I think, I want to say April 2016. And then his second show with us was Hellfest.
Oh, wow.
So he went from playing, I think it was Chain Reaction in Santa Ana, which holds maybe great little venue. It was like maybe holds, I think, 350 tops, maybe, and that's with probably Bustin' Fire Code for a bit.
Yep.
to Hellfest, which was, I mean, we weren't playing the main stage. We were playing like the Sanctuary or whatever stage they called. But still, at that point in time, more people than any one of us had ever played in front of. It was just like, there's a jumbotron with your head on it right now. You know, that kind of stuff. So
Right.
yeah, so it was like, welcome to the band, you know, that kind of thing. So he played with us, did, you know, maybe a year and a half, I think, up until April 2018. We kind of finally was like, okay, would you actually like to be in the band instead of like this guy that's like, hi, I show up and play on the guitar randomly. So he accepted, of course, and he's been in the band since, like officially in the band since, and is, you know, written and recorded with us on Death Atlas and Terracite. So we're all trucking along with that. And then with Ollie, he'd helped us out. He'd helped us out when our former bass player had a scheduling problem or some sort of issue. Was Canada, because, you know, as many people do, have a hard time with Canada entrance because of, you know, stuff.
It's rough.
Because a thing. And so Ollie, you know, helped us out at the time, and I think it was one of the summer slaughters we were on, maybe 2015, I think. And I think he did 2013 too. There was two separate instances. And he played the shows, and it was, you know, we're doing these and we're thinking like, oh man, I hope he's got the material down. I mean, I'm confident in his technical ability without question, you know. But, you know, regardless of what that is, playing with people for the first time, we'd never actually played with him before. So I think him and I, prior to the Summer Slaughter show, we kind of like set off in this corner. I'm like, is there any questions you have? You got everything? And he's like, I think so. What about this one part of this? I'm like, okay, it's this. He's like, oh, okay, I should have figured that out. And then that's it. That's the only prep we did. I think he got tabs from our old bass player, Derek. I think he got tabs from him, but he didn't. I mean, it was just he went from those and then kind of maybe certain parts not improvised, but just sort of filled in, you know, relative to what Derek was doing. And he went up there and he nailed it. Like, and not only nailed it, but played great, sounded great, tone was great, and performed like he'd been in the band for 10 years. Like, just great showman, you know, fun to watch, energetic. And so we were both like, or all of us were just like, whoa, okay. Keep it, you know, like, let's just don't lose his phone number, you know. And then, you know, we carried on. And then there was, like I said, the second instance of us, you know, asking if he could help us out. And then he did, flying, you know, came through beautifully, of course. And then we parted ways with our older bass player, and had hit Ollie up, and he was like literally like, yes, I'll do this. Yeah, and that was just, of course, delighted to hear that. And so, but he's still currently still in Cryptopsy.
Yeah, and they've got some shows coming up.
Yeah, and we were like, well, where there are friends of ours, we don't want to, you know, we had to ask him to ask them, you know, like, say, listen, we're not trying to, like, in the midst of some stuff you have going on, we're not trying to steal your bass player, cause problems. We want our relationship to remain good with you guys. So, and he asked them, and, you know, they were entering a period of sort of lesser activity at that time. Christian Donaldson has his own studio in up in Montreal area, and it's super busy, and he's doing crazy stuff now. And then Flo has his band with David Vincent and Rune that he does, and some other side stuff he's done in digital cryptopsy. And Matt McGacky's got his Vox and Hops, and he's a teacher. I think he's like an ESL teacher in Montreal area. And so they all have stuff, and he has I think he has a couple kids now. And so is Flo. Flo has a couple kids, and I think Christian does actually now too. But so they all have stuff going on. So it was more like, well, yes, if you want to go do this, and, you know, as far as our shows, when you're around, do them. And if we can figure something out where we need to, okay, we'll figure it out. So they kind of gave him their blessing, which we were just delighted with, you know, for multiple reasons, of course. And so, yeah, he He came down. I think one of the first shows where he was actually in the band was once again another fest thing, Rock Al Park in Bogota, which was another huge audience. You know, so I mean, although he had them, you know, he'd been practicing a bunch, so he had the material down. It wasn't like whatever, and he'd done fests like that before with Cryptopsy, but it was just like, I think it was another brilliant cattle moment where we're just like, do we really need to practice before we do this huge fest in front of a ton of people? Oh, we got this. We're fine. I don't. Although, fortunately, we've never crashed and burned on that. But I don't advise doing that. We always say that. We're like, this is the stupidest thing ever, but it hasn't bitten us yet until it does. But either way, so it was fine. But yeah, from then on. But after that show, he had a commitment with Cryptopsy, so he kept that commitment. And we did our tour late 2018 with Suffocation. With our friend from Tijuana, who's also the bass player in Broken Hope, Diego Soria. So he helped us out on that tour, and then Ollie was free after that Cryptopsy tour, which conflicted with ours. And then ever since, he's been, you know, killing it up with us. So really, it's, you know, we can't complain. We got solid, great sounding dudes, you know.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Speaking of festivals, you got a big one coming with the Decibel Fest with Dark Funeral.
Absolutely. That starts May 11th. Could you bring up that thing again so I can actually find out when our tour starts?
There it is.
I'll get my focals on here.
Me too.
I just got these glasses, which are your over 45 glasses, and
I got them too.
And I've got my hair, and I've got my hairline, which is your over 55 hairline. Okay, here we go. Old person font. Okay, May 11th, and then June 10th is the conclusion. So yeah, that starts May 11th in Santa Ana, and concludes in LA. And yeah, it's us, Dark Funeral, headlining. 200 Stab Wounds, not direct support. I'm sorry, before us, and then Black Braid opening.
Amazing.
Yeah, so it's a pretty mixed lineup, because I'd heard of Black Braid before, but really didn't know much about them. But I know they're kind of totally gaining a bunch of steam. And 200 Stab Wounds is a younger, like, total brutal, just like, you know, almost like Frozen Soul or what's the other? Sanguisugabog. Yeah, very much of that element, just super brutal, down-tuned. Just so they're doing that sort of stuff, and I know they've got a lot of attention lately. So it's the first couple bands are going to really add a lot, bolster the attendance and everything like that by dramatically, and then, you know, we're doing our thing, and then Dark Funeral's obviously been doing its thing since probably the mid '90s, I'd imagine. You know, they were always like one of the big names of black metal. So
when you guys approached Terrasite in the writing of that, did you guys say, hey, for this album, can we try to achieve this goal or some sound change, or you guys just write? And, like, how did that process go?
Well, it's like we always talk about, like, yeah, we kind of like, when we get together to talk about the next record, I mean, it's usually like, oh, let's meet up for lunch and, you know, get everyone, because we all live in, well, not all, but like Travis and Val are still in San Diego. And then Dave's in Seattle for the time being. He's moving at the end of June. And then Ollie in Montreal, and then me. I was in San Diego up until, you know, late 2020. But still, get everyone together and we talk about what's the next record going to be, what do we want to do, and then completely not follow it at all, of course. But I think we were saying, like, well, relative to Death Atlas, we wanted some more just more attention to, like, rhythmic elements, where it was like sort of the guitar bass locking up to where it's a little more like, for lack of a better term, typewritery at times. You know,
for sure.
But then still, I really wanted to expand on the sort of the atmospheric layering and, like, a lot of the vibey stuff that I was doing for Death Atlas. So I really, really want to do a lot more of that. And that's another one of the benefits of having another good person playing guitar in the band, is that, aside, in addition to what we mentioned with him doing different voicings or me doing one thing or whatever that give it a little more depth, I can really get stupid with, all this other layering crap I do, where it's almost like an ambient element, and he can just sit there. I don't mean just sit there, but he can just rip and just do, like, he'd be super notey or just like lots of chords or whatever. But I don't mean to like downplay, or like, I don't mean to just sit there and do whatever, because he's a lot of those voicings and stuff that you hear, this flavor, it's him doing that, so, but it's allows for me to do all this sort of, ethereal floaty crap, and then him to do his thing. And so that was another benefit. So it's got a lot more of those elements to it, in addition to the sort of the more locked up rhythmic stuff. And it's just a lot, to say the cliche metal thing, it's like just a heavier sounding record.
How about Travis's vocals? Is he still doing the more kind of melodic screaming? Because I said it's not on Weed Are Young.
Yes, he is, but I think he made a conscious decision to maybe use it a little more sparingly. It's definitely there. Like that's the funny thing. When like say Weed Are Young came out, like we were seeing comments, people were like, "Oh, thank God, it's all heavy again." It's none of that. Whatever he's doing, I'm just like, just wait. Sorry, But he did his, he did kind of decide, like, I want to, space it out a little bit more. It's still there, of course, because that's one of his great things he does in the band. It's just, I think it was his decision to do that. So it's still like all the stuff you heard on Weed Are Young, just all his different levels of abrasiveness that he does are all there. It's just he still does. I don't want to use what people call it, oh, he's doing the goblin voicing or whatever, that thing he does. It's still there. It's just, it's still there. It's just that it's used a little more sparingly, I think. But as far as coming together with any idea, I think this may have been the first time, probably because there was such a little time, like, from us having these concepts to actually starting to write it. Because Death Atlas came out at the end of 2019 in November. We did one tour in the States before the end of the year that year. We were on tour when the record came out. And then early February, we did a tour in Australia, New Zealand, and Japan. And then when we were in Australia, I mean, we'd heard rumblings before we left, but we were in Australia, and all of a sudden there's like, oh, there's this COVID thing. What's that about, And then all of a sudden, over the course of time we were in Australia, it was like all of us were getting emails from our parents going, honey, you might want to start taking this really seriously because the world kind of shut down. And we're just like, I'm drunk off Victoria Bitters in Australia. What do I care? Whatever. And so as we progressed through that tour towards Australia and New Zealand, it was like, oh crap, this is a thing. So we had the last 2 days. I think we had 2 shows in a row in Tokyo. So we flew from New Zealand to Tokyo, and then when we got off the airport or got to the airport in Tokyo, this is like funny how it's like the sort of infancy of handling a pandemic, seeing it, and this is not a discredit towards how they did things. It was just like everyone's like, no one knows what's going on. So we like get off the airport and there's like arrivals, and there was like 2 lanes. One was like had this sign in like multiple languages saying, "Do you feel like you have a fever? Are you feeling a little weak or dizzy? Then please, voluntarily submit to our medical exam. Go down this aisle, and then everyone else can go this way." So we're just like run right through to the right because everyone felt fine. Yeah, and then you saw maybe this one guy standing there with like a clipboard by the sick line, and no one was going into it. So we just went on and did our shows. Yeah, regardless of how they felt, probably. And we did our shows, and then we flew out, and we had a layover in Hawaii for a few hours. But either way, it ended up being, this is the way it was. We booked the flights months in advance, so it wasn't like, this was like something we had to do last second. But it was like the second to the last flight out of Asia before they travel. So if we hadn't have been on that, or there'd been some weird issue or delay or whatever, we would have probably had to try to get on like an amnesty flight that they did for people with families in the U.S. or whatever to just get you out of there. So Japan would have been a horrible place to have to stay. But we probably wouldn't have been able to afford it for very long. But it is a wonderful place. If anyone,
I love it.
This is my Japanese Convention and Tourism Bureau endorsement of that place. It is so amazing. And the people are great, and the shows are wonderful. So
I love Germany too. There's both of those two countries. The driving is great there, and and it's so clean. Or at least
it is.
Japan is absolutely clean.
Insanely
I was in
clean.
Berlin. Berlin was really clean too when I was there.
It is, and I hear like locals, of course, because it's
so jealous, right?
reality. Yeah, or like, oh, this part of town is so filthy, and it's like, I've been there. And actually, the part of place where I live now, which is Wedding, is the name of the district. It's traditionally like, it's the international area. Would Germans say that? Oh, it's the international area. And I'm like, so it's actually.
It's like, what would you call it? America Town?
No, but so it's a more diverse area, and so it's like historically in the 70s, I think in the 70s and 80s, it was considered it's this horrible, dangerous part of town, and even today, it's like people who had that instilled from them for such a long time still think of it that way. But compared to, obviously, a lot of cities I've been in internationally, and a lot of American cities, this is like, are you kidding me? It's extremely like the public transportation is excellent. That's one thing I'll say. Holy crap. Like they have that down. Like I have literally, there's a trolley tram stop, right out. Literally, if I got a good enough run up, I could probably make it to the sidewalk. But if I got farther than that, I could hit the tram stop. So it's right there. So if you want to, it's like maybe from here to the airport is, depending on the time of day, like 45 minutes.
That's not bad.
So it's not too bad. Maybe an hour. If you're if you have a super early flight and then the trains don't run quite as frequently, if you're leaving overnight or if you have to leave at like 3 a.m, then it's going to take you an hour. But if you're going in the rest of the part of the day, 45 minutes.
That's for sure.
And it was really easy to ride the public transportation there versus like France was a little bit harder. Like in Paris, it's a little bit harder. At least it was for me. I thought Berlin was super easy.
Oh yeah, granted we weren't familiar with it, but I remember years ago we were on tour in Paris, or we were in Paris and we were taking their metro, and we were a little confused, and we were like trying to navigate like their subway map or something like that, and this kid went past the turnstile. He was wearing a suffocation shirt or hoodie. And we're like, oh, here's a death metal guy. He'll help us. And we kind of appealed to him, and and we didn't have any idea if he spoke any English whatsoever, of course. So idiot Americans were, and he literally he kind of looked at us, looked at the map, and chuckled, and just walked away. And we're like, oh, okay.
Oh, jeez.
Thanks, bud. Yeah, he must not have been able to speak English. Yeah, that's totally what it was. Yeah. So
yeah.
But other people we talked to have had kind of confusion as well. But thus far, if you look at the subway map here, the train map, it's really complicated looking, but everything's fairly logically laid out. So I'm still getting my bearings, but it'll come.
All right. So you guys have you're taking pre-orders on the vinyl right now?
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Let's get that up.
There we go.
Angus.
I cannot wait for this album.
It's
man, me too.
Like I said, it's a lot more. Like I said, it's heavier in the traditional kind of heavy way. I mean, people say, "Oh, this is our heaviest work to date," and I'm like, does that mean slower and dumbed down, or does that mean more brutal, or whatever? So this is it's when I say heavy, I mean more chunky, And like I mentioned before, there's a lot more like tighter rhythmic elements than we've done in the past. Like it's not like Dave just blasting and us like ripping underneath it. Yeah, believe me, there's still a bunch of it. Yeah, but there's a lot of there's a lot more rhythmic stuff going on, and it's just a lot more ambient elements.
Yeah, Josh, a year ago when I saw you guys in Atlanta, I couldn't help but just wonder, and I joked with you later about this, you guys don't have enough merch.
I know, right?
If anybody goes to a cattle decapitation show, Oh my gosh! Like it's the whole wall. Like it was a wall like 25 feet wide of merch, like 3 shirts or hoodies high. It's amazing.
Oh yeah, we actually, funny you mentioned that. Maybe I don't know, it's almost about a year ago by now. We were talking about that, and we were talking with someone who has like had tons of experience, like a professional merch person that was running, like just doing like sort of projections and prospectus stuff for like big bands and everything, like legitimate big bands. And so she told us, she was like, seems counterintuitive, but try a few less designs. And we're like, okay, well, we want to give a little something for everyone, you know, so people can go, oh, I'm into this, or I like these type of colors. And she goes, no, I totally get your train of thought, and it totally makes sense, but it doesn't translate to actual sales. We're like, oh. So her thing was, you know, maybe you don't have to get crazy. You don't have to cut down to like four designs or anything like that. But she's like, maybe shave off a few here and there that you could like, aren't your first picks or whatever, or first couple picks. You just make a core, you know, lineup, have it diverse, but just have a core lineup of stuff, and then try that. So strangely enough, on that Amon Amarth tour we did at the end of the year, we were limited because it's a merch. You know, we had 4 cloth designs.
Oh yeah.
A media item, just a CD or album or whatever, and then like a sticker or like a button, you know, tchotchke stuff. And so, granted, those are a lot larger shows than we would normally play, but we had 4 designs, and I mean, yeah, there's obviously these 2 are the most popular, but it almost helped. People were just going in like boom, 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 maybe that done. And it was just, and especially it was this sort of, they didn't have to do what I would do and sit there and wring my hands for an hour over, well, I really like the blue logo on that one, but the design is just okay. But I love that design, but that logo is super dumb. Why is it that color of green, you know? And I just sort of like, you know, whine and wince over it, and then either not get something or just, you know, I'll just get a sticker. I could justify that, whatever. Here, have your best stuff, narrow it down, and then people will be like, boom, boom, boom. You know, it becomes almost like a, you know, they don't have to think about it. So that was kind of at least a little bit of this preliminary, I don't want to say proof, but just sort of a bolstering of her argument, where we could go, well, she probably knows what the heck she's talking about. So like I said, we're still rolling pretty heavy, you know, Todd, like we got stuff. But it's going to be a little bit more reasonable. It's still going to be ridiculous compared to most bands, but it's not going to be as dumb as it was before. Because that tour, holy crap, we had so much stuff. It was so dumb. I mean, I take pictures to be like I remember I was kind of doing the like, hey, what do you want me to get you for merch? And she's like, oh, well, just take me a picture of the merch booth and stuff. So I'm just like, like 4 panels that I'm like sending these photos back. And so it's like, I think that was that sort of realization. I'm like, well, I mean, it was a realization prior to that, but that really brought it home. I'm like, we got a lot of stuff. So yeah, I think we're going to cut it. We're going to pare it down a little bit, and you know, but still, I mean, it's the stuff that I've seen thus far. Like we had just had the merch drop maybe a couple weeks ago. We're going to do another one here in maybe a few weeks too. So that's more seasonally appropriate, shall we say? So yeah, so we got to be a season ahead. So yeah, we'll be coming out with more stuff.
Terracite does remind me a little bit of Easter. You know, the sun
the paint, the colors,
and the
a lot of
greens
pastels.
at the bottom.
Yeah, it's
absolutely.
That's the thing is like if you're trying to come up with merch that's related to that, you're like, well, I don't know. Are we really going to do like a peach colored shirt or a pink shirt? I mean, I know like Travis is like, these Gen Z kids. I mean, they're all wearing like hot pink hoodies and like Easter yellow like pants and stuff. I don't know. Everything looks good. You know, it's all these sort of very bright pastel kind of colors.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't think he was suggesting like, guys, we got to change with the times or whatever. But he was sort of like, you know, saying this puts me not in a corner, but like I've got to really be creative this time with stuff that doesn't sort of betray the band's aesthetic or like what it's about, but still not caters to that in any way, but just is a little more like eye-catching maybe to someone like that. you know.
Sanguisugabog sells out their really bright colors. I listened to an interview with them, and they did some like fluorescent hoodies and stuff like, and sold it out like right away.
Yeah. So I remember like maybe 2016, 17. There was like all those deathcore bands were doing like, yeah, it was a black shirt, but it was just this giant print with like 50 different colors on it and stuff like that. Now it's like it may be a simpler print, but yeah, the person's wearing like a chartreuse hoodie or something like that. So it's definitely I don't know, another one of those musical / aesthetic phases that we're kind of living through, I guess, that we will hopefully somehow come on the other side of. So we'll see. I don't know.
Well, I think you guys are.
Oh, go right ahead.
I was just going to say, I think I'll be seeing you in May. I think it's around the 19th of May in Atlanta with Dark Funeral. I'll be.
Oh, you're going to Atlanta. Why did I say Charlotte?
Well, I can't remember because I'm going to see Enslaved as well, and so I can't remember if Enslaved, and I'm going to see Morbid Angel's 40th anniversary tours in Atlanta. That one's in Atlanta.
Oh, okay.
I get confused on which one is in Charlotte. One of them's in Charlotte, though.
I feel that we're playing in Charlotte. I think it's at
cool.
There's a bigger venue there that's like the one we played at the Monomarth, and then there's like the side venue that's still pretty dang big. I think we're playing in the side venue that's still pretty dang big, you know. I forget what that place is called, but this is a nice venue. I remember. Yeah. So
I'd rather see you guys in Charlotte. That's a 2.5-hour drive.
I was going to say I didn't know where you are at in North Carolina, but yeah. But
what about it's going to be Denver?
I was going to say
I'm going to make a holiday of it.
I was going to say like
sure.
I've done that Omaha. Well, I don't know where you are in Nebraska, but I've done at least the Omaha to Denver drive, and it's not fun. It's no bueno.
It's no fun, but totally worth it. I hope so. Man, I got to thank you so much for joining us today.
Sure.
Just a wealth of knowledge, and just answered so many questions I've had in my head. Human Hoof Beast as well. So, man, just keep on doing what you're doing. And what message do you have to give our viewers here and some new fans you've made today, and probably fans that have been with you for years?
Well, hopefully. Yeah, I don't know. Like, we just keep trying to like improve on what we're doing, how many years into things. And hopefully that's evident in what we're putting out musically and for conceptually and lyrics and stuff like that. So, I mean, I don't think, and I would hope for any musician, that they're never really satisfied with what they're doing, and they just got to keep pushing forward. And I think the only time that you can really, the only time you're really super happy with stuff is when you look back at it later and you've completely like separated yourself from it, you know? So I just hope that we can continue to move forward and, you know, look back and be like, oh, okay, well, that was all right. I feel confident in that and happy with it. And the people responded to it in a way that was like, meant something to them, and that it communicated, you know, either what we were trying to, or that it some way resonated with them in a way that it affected their life. So that's the best I can do. But if anyone, like, I don't know, I saw a couple people zoom in on the bottom with comments there. So I don't know what your guys' time frame is, but if anyone is there or whatever, if anyone has any questions, I'm totally happy to elaborate on that if you guys are willing and have time. If not, totally cool.
Yeah, and we always encourage everybody that does tune in to ask and get your questions answered as much as possible. For me, I have to reopen my store, so.
Oh, okay. Totally understand.
Oh, okay.
Human Hoof Beast, if you want to go ahead and close it out for us. Like I said, thank you a million.
Thank
you. For coming on the Underground. One of my favorite bands, and obviously everyone that's tuned in today just loves what you're doing. Please keep doing, and most definitely everybody out there, stay heavy.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Right on. Yeah, so one of the, like, Josh, you are an encyclopedia for metal. Like, you know more bands than I do, and I feel like I'm kind of an encyclopedia, but you blow me out of the water with this.
Oh.
And like, one of the things that I also wanted to hit on was a little bit more about specifically your influences like right now, who you really dig right now, who's coming out right now, and also your past, like maybe your black metal influences.
Oh,
Tell us a little bit about that.
I think, I don't know if I could I'll try to start and be not as wordy as I usually am with everything. But when I was like first starting out, it was like, I was one of those guys. It was just like, turn on the radio, turn on the radio. The second we got in the car or whatever. So then it was, this is early mid 80s or whatever. So it was like top 40 radio. And what was popular then was like basically sort of not pre-hair metal, but like Rat and stuff like
Quiet
that.
Riot.
Quiet Riot, Rat, and then like Prince and stuff like that. So that, and then a lot of those really good sort of post new wave, like Tears for Fears was super popular. I love Prince. I love Tears for Fears.
I saw Tears for Fears in 2007.
I love Rat. Yeah, I saw him like a few years after that. Great. Yeah, and them and Hall & Oates at the same show.
Oh.
It was so sick. So that's what I started with. So yeah, you had like the Van Halen like guitar, his tapping and acrobatics and stuff like that, which I, obviously I'm like listening to that, and like, but it always with me was like, that was just like a really nice dinner, but hit with this really cool spice that made the dinner. But the dinner is the song, so I was very song oriented. So even if there were guitar players in these bands that I admired, or their riffs or their, crazy leads or whatever, it was more just like the song and the vibe of everything being together, every instrument and the lyrics and the vocals and everything. So I think from there, it was this, the most typical, same as a bajillion people progression. Oh, top 40 radio, and then gravitating towards hard rock or whatever. So then you'd go into town, and we lived, like I said, outside of town quite a bit. And you go into town, and the place that had record stores. So I just buy these. There was a tiny little grocery store in this little town near where I grew up with that carried music magazines. I don't know why. Who was buying them? I was probably the only person that was buying them. But they had like Hit Parader and Metal
Circus,
Edge.
maybe?
Circus, Hit Parader, Metal Edge, and those. And so for whatever reason, there are these 3 magazines here, and it was like this one. And the first one I picked up was Hit Parader with Rat on the cover, because I like Rat, Yeah. So I like read that, and I like all these little ads in the back for like said $5 in a self-addressed stamped envelope for this skull earring, or just stuff like that. And it looked like the ad looked like something someone drew in their study hall. It was amazing. I love that aesthetic.
Yeah.
Such garbage. I love it. So I was really that stuff really struck me. And then after those bands, I'd read about stuff in magazines, like Rip magazine they started carrying Rip, so they would cover like, oh, this isn't just like these easily accessible stuff. They'd have thrash bands, and they'd have kind of these sort of like crossover hardcore Crumbsuckers and Cro-Mags and DRI and all those crossover kind of bands. And then oh, what's this like oh, Bathory, what the heck is that? Just these sort of those type of bands that I'd see them in there, and then I'd find like there was power metal, which wasn't power metal like it is today. It was Hit Parader put it out, and it was like the heavier end. So it was then it was Slayer and Testament and Exodus and King Diamond and all that sort of stuff. And then they'd have these spotlights on these kind of like demo bands, which, Nuclear Assault, who's that? Just stuff that's all these bands that grew into these either bigger players or just more influential stuff. And then I started that was stuff you could I found at that little store. I'd go into town and like go to the there was the heavy metal section at the Camelot Records, and next to it was the alternative section. So I'd kind of start at the beginning. Maybe once every week or two, I'd go in there, start at A, and just go through everything, and kind of put the ones I wanted, if whatever money I had, put the ones I wanted under my arm, and then kind of whittle down from those what I could afford, and put these back and whatever. And then I'd bleed into the alternative section, which that was like at that time that was such a big. What did that mean? That means everything from like the Dead Kennedys to like Cocteau Twins, like just totally like this huge range of stuff. So Bauhaus. Exactly. Joy Division, Bauhaus, all that stuff, New Order. And I made some probably at the time purchases. I was like, what is this weak, dancey garbage? And now I'm like, yes, throw this other crap out. That's what I want.
Yeah.
So, I got this sort of sampling of like, okay, here's, whatever thrash I was buying or whatever. And then some of this alternative stuff like, oh, Metallica wears Misfits shirts. I'll buy this Misfits record or whatever, And then I think a key moment was my buddy, as I was in 7th grade, my buddy, his dad or stepdad was like a maintenance guy at a hotel. And he found a cassette tape that someone left in one of the rooms and brought it home to my friend. It was, hey, this is the garbage you like right here. Take this. And he let me borrow it for a bit. And one side was Scream Bloody Gore, and the other side was dealing with it.
Oh,
So it's like, that was like, okay. So from then I just started like looking for more like, the crappier the cover, probably the better, like, oh, this looks like someone's cousin did this while they were, it's terrible. That was appealing. Like, you guys mentioned covers before and everything. And so I had fortunate access to a college town, which is maybe 35 minutes away. And they had like these record stores that were like all the college kids went to, and they were kind of dark and it was like, smells weird, like whatever incense to cover up all the weed they were smoking in the back or whatever. And there's cats in the record store. Oh my gosh, it's like a living room with all this vinyl, and I haven't heard of these bands. So I had that as an outlet. So I'd go there, and their metal section, they didn't have alternative. They just had, they divided it up because they actually knew what they were doing. It was just, whoever was their record buyer or their curated each section was just incredible. So I had this, I don't want to say privilege, but this sort of access to an incredible record store when I was a teenager, where I'm just like, boom, 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 boom. And would just be able to, have my money saved up or whatever, and just get these albums that, was really fortunate to have. So I think I was influenced by a wider variety of stuff earlier on. And, I was like one of the only few people in my school that listened to even remotely music in that direction. So there wasn't like a lot of sort of cool kid peer pressure to like, well, you can only like thrash metal, you can only like death metal, you can only like punk or whatever. It was just sort of like you just grabbed what hit you. And so it was just this melding of all these things. And I mean, guitar wise, like to get back to that, like I really didn't like, yeah, of course there's players I gravitated towards, I was impressed with. I'm like, gosh, this guy's incredible. But it wasn't necessarily like, if they were like some shredder dude, that was like just a bonus, It was more like say, okay, perfect example, Piggy from Voivod. Like his, like Nothing Face. Yes. His
Nothing
like
Face
guitar
is fucking awesome.
It's incredible. Like that is a huge influence on me. But I mean, whether it's apparent now or in the past more, I don't know. Either way, that Piggy from Voivod, and then this one's hard to hear because I don't think it really, like sort of trickled down. But that doesn't mean my appreciation is Kurt Kohlfeldt and Mike Alford from Holy Terror. That. Their two records, Terror and Submission and Mind Wars, they should have been a lot more well known than they were. They were like, and I don't mean this anywhere. This is not a derogatory thing towards their band, but they always got bumped to like second tier on stuff, and it was like they blew away so many bands. Oh, they were so good. They were so good, and I think I don't even know. I think two of them have passed away, like the singer Keith Dean, and I think their drummer passed away, but the one of the guitar players, Mike Alford, does a band, I think, that's basically gets together and it does like almost like a Holy Terror tribute. It's just him and some other guys. Him, and then there's Kurt Kohlfeldt, who was the other guitar player. He's in this band, or was that band Zeke, that was like kind of a garage, kind of a sort of a power punk garage band. I think he still plays with them, but that's another big influence, like Piggy, and then the guys from Holy Terror, Jim Durkin and Eric Meyer from Dark Angel. Jim Durkin just passed away like a few days ago.
Gene Hoglan just rejoined with them.
Yeah, they just started writing a new record. Like the original. I don't know if it was when I say original lineup, I mean Ron Reinert, the last vocalist. It wasn't Don Doty, the first guy, but then just a lot of thrash like that. And I mean, I think those were the ones that really like spoke. I mean, of course, like with Metallica and stuff like that, that was the big step after like top 40 metal was them, you know. So of course,
How
like Red Lightning, Master Puppets, Justice for All, this like the guitar playing on that super hit me as well, you know. And then Peace Sells, Megadeth, you know.
how
And then
about what about Atheist and like the Human album from Death when that came out? Did that grab you?
at that point in time, I'd like. I mean, I was really into like the first. I think the last Death record I bought was Spiritual Healing.
Mm.
I think after that, I was just like, I need more blast beats, you know, or whatever. So it took me how many years after those albums had been out to kind of revisit them and be like, oh, okay. I mean, I never saw Death during like their first, like the Billy Andrews, Terry, Chuck, and Rick Ross era, or even the James Murphy era. I didn't see him during that time. I saw him on Sound of Perseverance tour when I was still living in Chicago. And I was like, oh, better late than never, you know, kind of thing like that. So saw him then, and then, yeah, I was just, as far as death metal guitar players go, I mean, there's a million great ones, but Bob from Immolation to this day is still one of my favorites. He's incredible. And
what a nice band too.
Yeah, super good dudes.
Such nice guys.
They are so sick, and they keep getting I mean, they've been a band since like probably the late 80s, maybe like 87. And they just somehow keep getting better and sounding better, and have been, you know, I saw them probably the first time like 97, 98 or something like that. And just, they sounded great then, and they just keep getting tighter and just better. So, I mean, kudos to them. So
to me, they're kind of like Overkill. Like I love Overkill. They've never put out a bad album to me at all. And Immolation's the same way.
Overkill, that's another one of those like that I think didn't get their credit, you know. They kind of just like,
I totally agree.
That totally got like not swept on, not just unfairly overlooked. How about that? You know, I think because they're like, just their riffs are just so like pissed off sounding, and just like, yeah, those guys still doing it to this day, still touring all the time. You know? I mean,
and I think what did Bobby Blitzer had a stroke about 10 or 12 years ago, I think it was.
Really? Oh, I had
took him a while. Took him a while to recover from that.
Wow, I'd imagine that's like, wow.
That Years of Decay album is so amazing, and all these people who only heard Testament, Metallica, Slayer, and Megadeth, when I let them hear this, I used to tattoo in the tattoo shop, and they would be like, "Oh my God, who is this?" Yeah. Well, they were on Atlantic Records. They were pretty big.
Yeah, it's crazy at the time that was still a possibility for a band at that level. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, oh, they're on a major label. Okay. Well, it's like now it's like, nay. I don't know if it's possible for anyone to be on a label anymore. Like, I don't even know if like, you know, how many. It's not like there's any labels that are going to spring out of anything that aren't run by a band themselves, or is it like a band putting out a couple their own material and maybe a couple friends stuff? Because it's just, I don't think. As things evolve, I don't know if that model is going to be at least available for new labels to pop up in a traditional manner. You know what I mean? That's how things are run. So,
well, as we close this up, could you talk about your black metal influence, especially with the guitar? Because I've always wanted to ask about this, because I hear black metal every album you've done.
I think like the first, I mean, like I said, I heard Bathory like at that was probably the first black metal band I ever heard. And then probably some other stuff that at the time, I was just like, oh, what is this? Oh, that sounds weird, you know. And just didn't, you know, glom onto it or whatever. But I think I got like, I was 90, like mid 90s or something. I was, I just kind of started when I was in Chicago. I started hanging out with, the bass player in the band I was in, one of the bands I was in there, booked shows. In Chicago, all ages shows, and did some other stuff in the suburbs and the county. And he would get like, you know, people, that was back when you sent your demo to get, oh, can we play a show there and stuff? And he'd get some stuff from like Century Media or bigger Candlelight, you know, labels like that. And so I think he'd be like, Elmore, here, this is something you'd like, you know, kind of throws it to me or whatever. And I think I heard a lot of my sort of second wave bands like that, you know. And then I remember really getting into Night Side Eclipse or something like that. And my friend of mine, I was like, he's like, oh, what are you listening to or something? And I had like a T-shirt or something. He's like, oh, Emperor, yeah, I love it. He goes, have you heard? You know, at that point I hadn't heard of Davis Mysterious yet. You know, he's like, oh, dude, fucking Euronymous, dude, you need to check this shit out. So he like, you know, let me borrow that CD, and I was like, oh shit, there's another flavor of awesome, you know, I haven't, you know, whatever been exposed to. So then of course now I'm purposely looking for this sort of stuff. So then, you know, I was in Chicago, so there's like a million stores that have incredible black metal sections. So I was just able to grab a bunch of stuff. So I would say, I mean, from even the early Emperor stuff up until his solo, you know, his stuff he's been doing, you know, continues to do. Isan's like not only musically, but I mean, I've never met him in person. We did 70K with him a few years ago, but I didn't actually meet him. I just sort of like talked to their bass player and their keyboard player or whatever. Okay. But his guitar work I've always been really impressed with. Like he can do all the noodly stuff, but there's a lot of it that seems like just an aside to the greater scope of what he's capable of. So I really appreciated that. Of course, I mean, a lot of the black metal sound as we're used to it wouldn't be there if Euronymous' guitar style hadn't, you know, hadn't done what he did, you know, because so many people copied him. But I really like a lot of, like, I don't, like, once again, the members are anonymous or whatever. I'm sure if you look deep enough, you can find out who they are online. But like, whoever does a lot of guitar stuff for Decibel Omega is incredible.
Oh, I know.
It's just like
Heraclitus album.
So good.
Oh my
it's ridiculous. Yeah, it's like that, and then Blood Us Nord. There's like the sort of like almost really like sort of, you know, like warped sounding guitar lines they do. I love that stuff. Yeah. And you know, there's tons of like, actually I could name the labels because it's funny because like how you listen or I listen to music has changed, where it's like before it's like I am going and looking for this band at this store and whatever, whereas now it's like, oh, I really like a lot of the bands that this label puts out, you know.
Season of Mist, yeah.
Yeah, or like Mr. Chaos or you know, Knife Vision or any of those small labels or whatever. And so I'll just kind of like go on their Bandcamp page or go whatever and just sort of let it run, you know. Or I'll go, you know, buy the digital download and then listen to it obsessively and forget about it and then find it again and all this stuff. And half the time, like I only remember a name of like the handful of bands, but just like those labels are putting out incredible music, you know. Right. Just like is it what's that other label? Amor Fatty or whatever you pronounce it. I don't know that. I think it's like a French. Is it a French label? I don't know. But just you know, just incredibly high quality material. There's just, I think it's one of those things where it's not as prominent anymore. Like I think the sort of Dimmu Borgir Cradle of Filth days where it was like, oh, black metal in that sort of way. Yeah. But it's all kind of gone a little more back underground, and just the quality is just through the roof, you know. Yeah. There's just some incredible bands right now that, like the whole Icelandic, I mean, I've worn this hoodie probably every day for the past 10 years or whatever, but all the Icelandic bands are just, for a country whose population I think is only like 50,000. Right. There's got to be like 20 some bands. I mean, black metal bands, 20, 25 bands. And there's probably only like 30 people in all these bands. It's like everyone's in the same, you know, band or whatever. Yeah. It's incredible the amount of quality there. So, I mean, I wish I could name like, aside from what I've already mentioned, just like really influential individuals, but it's more, like I said, the songs and just the shape of what the bands do. That's really going to draw me there. Like, I really like how you mentioned earlier, Enslaved, like writes 10-minute songs that aren't boring.
Oh my God. What's that Axioma Odini album? I think it was like 2010 or 2011.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my fucking God.
That record, and then was it Ritter? That one after. It's just, and this actually, that's another band that like, it's almost like a I mean, for me, not to them, but like a handicapped how prolific they are. Because I have a time where like I was able to just put so much time into like digesting whatever the new record was and then all of a sudden it's how many years later and I'm like, wait, when they have a new record out? Didn't they have two out that I haven't even heard yet, you know? And it's just like life happens and everything, and all of a sudden you're like missing out on all this good music. So I don't know, that's just probably a consequence of like things changing and you're just getting older or whatever and having things change in your life. But yeah, no, I mean, as far as like what you're hearing, for me, I think a lot of it's like a lot of that sort of swirly, seasick sounding black metal stuff that I think it's a combination of those influences I just mentioned with, like I said, I was living in Chicago up until 2000. And at that time, there were all these like really, really abrasive kind of Skin Graft Records bands that just with a super skronky, like abrasive guitar playing that just, even if I wasn't going to see those bands, it was like the cultural environment at the time. And I worked at a venue for a while and they were playing those shows. So I'd see these bands and just be like, you know, this is nothing I'd ever buy and listen to, but holy crap, this is amazing. And then of course later now I'd search it out and go buy it or like listen to it, you know. So, but it was one of those places you're at that I'd say you didn't appreciate it at the time, but like in hindsight, you see all these bands that were active when you were there and saw probably just like, oh, those bands played in the other room, whatever. Oh my gosh, now people are like basing their lives around those bands, you know. So it was cool to be able to see like, oh, that's the guy from the Jesus Lizard down at the end, or oh, that's, you know, the big black, or you know, like the guy, you know, Steve Albinian, you know, or Shellac, you know, any of those people that are hanging out, and just got US Maple or Gina, any of those bands where it's just, you know, it's I think that combined with like the black metal thing, and then like really liking top 40 radio in the 80s, you know, kind of everything together.
When I listen to it, I can just tell that you're a fan of black metal and you're bringing that in there, and I totally appreciate that dynamic. You guys are so dynamic. I totally appreciate it. When I speak with you and Travis at shows, you can tell you're artists. Just how just the way your minds are and just how you think about it. I really appreciate that. And we have to wrap it up because our producer has to go. Josh, I thank you so much for this.
Of course,
this was awesome. I love discussing metal. I actually live in Greenwood, South Carolina. I'm in the middle of nowhere. And so like I don't have anybody to discuss metal with except for my buddy Gangris and Reaper when we do our shows. But thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, I did see a little message pop up that was one of those things that is millisecond read, and was when I was talking about being from rural Illinois or whatever. There's a person that came at the bottom and says, "Hey, I live off an island off the coast of Maine. Y'all don't know what isolated is."
Yeah, really. Yeah, he has I think it's an hour and a half boat ride for him to get to the mainland.
Oh wow! He's like, yeah, my parents live on an island in Lake Michigan. It's like 45 minutes on a ferry kind of thing. So, but holy crap! Yep. It's at the bottom right there now. So,
well, thank you so much, Josh. I will see you in May when you come with Dark Funeral, probably up in Charlotte. I think I'm going to make that show. And just thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing this with everybody. Everybody is, here to benefit from what you've shared. Like so much insight, things I never knew about the band. I now know.
Yeah. Anytime. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to do it.
Thanks, my brother. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in, and please share this out. Tell people about it. Go see Cattle Decapitation when they're on their tours. I know that you're probably doing stadium shows or summer tours in Europe as well.
We're doing this run that's you just pictured, and then actually we're putting together. We were just talking about it the other day. It's like an overseas. I can't reveal it. Yeah, I know it sounds all mysterious, like whatever, but I'm not supposed to say anything. An overseas stuff that's not Europe. I'll say that right now. But it's overseas stuff in the late summer, and then we're doing a headliner tour where we're playing like probably well over an hour, in November. To say mid-November to mid-December, something like that. And then we'll probably be another U.S. tour and then overseas in a more European way next year, early on in the year.
All right. Well, there we have it, guys. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you guys again on the next episode. And Josh, thanks again.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
I will see you again soon.
Okay, have a great night.
Best wishes. Bye-bye.